I took him to my house, walked him down the street. I don't know why the media acts like the motherfucker couldn't walk. He walked very well. Walked him upstairs, kicked his ass, and killed him.
Phoenix in Arizona is a sprawling metropolis set against the breathtaking backdrop of the Sonoran Desert. As the fifth largest city in the United States, it boasts a vibrant mix of Native American, Mexican and Western influences shaped by centuries of history. Once home to the ancient Hohokam people who engineered an advanced canal system, Phoenix has since grown into a bustling hub of commerce, tourism and outdoor adventure. Despite its rapid expansion and modern skyline, Phoenix also has a darker side, one marked by crime, poverty, and the struggles of those living on society's fringes. On a scorching August morning in 2009, firefighters responded to a blaze behind a church near Peoria and 12th Avenues. What they assumed was a routine call quickly turned into something far more sinister. As the flames died down, they discovered something horrifying inside that burning trash can. It was a quiet morning in Phoenix, Arizona on the 5th of August 2009. The city was already simmering under the weight of the summer heat, the kind that clung to the skin and turned the streets into a shimmering mirage. But that morning there was something else in the air. Something darker. Something far more unsettling. A thick, acrid stench cut through the usual morning haze, drifting across the streets and settling into the back parking lot of the Covenant of Grace Church at the intersection of 9th and Pretoria Avenue. It was the unmistakable, stomach-churning smell of something burning. A passing driver spotted smoke curling up from a metal trash can behind the church. Thinking that it was nothing more than garbage set ablaze by a careless hand, they called the fire department, expecting a quick response and little more. But as firefighters arrived and doused the smouldering flames, the routine call took a nightmarish turn. Stuffed inside the twisted metal drum was a body, dismembered, charred, and unrecognisable. Even the fire couldn't fully erase the brutality that was inflicted on the victim. His skull had been caved in, the result of repeated savage blows. A 3-inch nail had been driven straight into his head. His teeth had all been ripped from the skull. At least 50 stab wounds riddled his body. His legs had been cut off, and there was an effort to remove one of his arms as well. As if that wasn't enough, the man's throat had also been slashed. All of these injuries had been inflicted while the man was still alive. They were in various stages of healing. In the end, however, the man had been killed by strangulation. A TV wire had been wrapped tightly around his neck, cutting off the airflow. This wasn't just a killing. This was something else entirely. Something personal. Something filled with rage. It was clear that the man had been tortured. The remains were carefully transported to the medical examiner's office, where an attempt would be made to determine the victim's identity. Meanwhile, word of the gruesome discovery began to ripple through the city, sending a shudder through the community. Among those most shaken were the members of the Covenant of Grace Church. Pastor Leonard Griffin struggled to make sense of the horrifying discovery made behind his church. Speaking to reporters, he said, "It's upsetting to us. We're sad for the family of the victim. We have no idea who the person was or what the situation was. We're here as a lighthouse for the community, to try and help spread the peace of God here. We just hope we can take this tragedy and try to turn it into something positive and good for the community." In those early hours, theories began to swirl. Had the victim been a member of the church? Perhaps they were attacked after leaving an event the night before. There had been a gathering at the church that ended around 9:30 p.m. Was it possible that somebody had been targeted as they walked to their car? But as detectives worked through the list of attendees, that theory quickly unravelled. Everybody from the event had been accounted for. Whoever the victim was, they weren't tied to the church. And that left detectives with a chilling question. If not the church, then where had this man come from? And perhaps, even more disturbingly, who had wanted him erased so badly that they had gone to such brutal lengths to destroy his body? Over at the medical examiner's office, as detectives worked to piece together the brutal final moments of the unknown victim, they had one crucial tool at their disposal: fingerprints. Despite the damage inflicted on the body, technicians were able to lift a usable set of prints. These prints were then run through the national database, and soon, a match appeared on the screen. The dismembered remains belonged to 46-year-old Terry Neely. Terry wasn't a nameless drifter or somebody living on the fringes of society. He had a home, a life, and people who knew him. Terry Neely was a paraplegic, confined to a wheelchair for most of his life. While he had limited use of his legs, it was only for short periods, and he relied on his chair to navigate the world. Terry lived in an assisted living care facility, where he received support due to both his physical limitations and a mental disability. Those who knew Terry described him as kind, friendly, and eager to please. He had a habit of telling people what they wanted to hear. Small embellishments, little white lies, not out of malice but simply because he wanted to impress others, to fit in, and to feel like he belonged. He was well known in his community, but he wasn't well connected. People recognised Terry's face, exchanged pleasantries with him, but beyond that, Terry lived a quiet, solitary life. He had no close friends, no family nearby, just the staff and residents at the assisted living facility. But despite this, those who interacted with Terry said that he was always happy. He had his routines, his small joys, his own way of getting through life. And yet, somehow, this gentle man, who had difficulty walking, who needed help with his day-to-day tasks, had met a death so violent, so over-the-top brutal, that it left even the most seasoned detectives shaken. Who would do this to Terry Neely? And more importantly, why? With Terry Neely's identity confirmed, detectives now had a new mission: retrace his final steps and uncover the series of events that led to his brutal murder. They started with the last confirmed sighting. On the evening of the 2nd of August 2009, at around 8 p.m, Terry was seen leaving his assisted living facility in his motorised wheelchair. Where he was headed, nobody knew. As detectives worked on the case, they made a public appeal. If anybody had seen Terry that night, or they had come across an abandoned wheelchair, they were urged to come forward. But rather than waiting for tips, detectives turned to surveillance cameras in the area. One particular piece of footage caught their attention. Shortly before the burning trash can was reported behind the church, a white Buick or Pontiac was seen leaving the area. This was significant. If the killer had torched Terry's body, they likely drove to the scene, dumped him and then fled. What does a fire need to burn? Accelerant. Detectives had a new theory. The killer had to buy gasoline somewhere before setting the fire. So they combed through security footage at gas stations near the crime scene, looking for any suspicious purchases around the time the fire was discovered. Then at a Circle K gas station, just 1 hour before the fire, they spotted something. A man entered the station, walked up to the counter and paid for $3 worth of gas, just enough to fill up a small portable gas can. This wasn't just any man. Detectives recognised him immediately. His name was Edward McFarland, but on the streets he was better known as Cracker. He had it tattooed across his neck. McFarland was a petty criminal, a name that had crossed police desks more than once. There was another detail that caught their attention. He drove a 1988 Chevy Celebrity, a car that closely resembled the one seen leaving the crime scene. This wasn't just coincidence. Police moved quickly. Just a few days later, they tracked him down outside a Kmart near Interstate 17 and Northern Avenue. McFarland wasn't exactly a master of deception. He had a gun, drugs, and a needle on him at the time of his arrest. But it was what he said when officers snapped the handcuffs around his wrists that shook them. "What took you so long?" McFarland was no stranger to law enforcement, and at first it seemed like his arrest might close the case. But then detectives made another startling discovery. He wasn't the only suspect. When McFarland was picked up, police were already looking at him for another crime, a local robbery. And he hadn't done it alone. His accomplice was a woman named Angela Simpson. Simpson was quickly brought in for questioning, and as detectives started piecing things together, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Locals had seen Terry Neely with Angela Simpson on multiple occasions. They weren't just acquaintances. The two did drugs together, often meeting outside an abandoned apartment complex not too far from the crime scene. Was it possible that both Edward McFarland and Angela Simpson had something to do with Terry's murder? Or had Terry trusted the wrong person, walking into something far more sinister than he ever imagined? What detectives would soon uncover would shake them to their very core. Because Angela Simpson wasn't just any suspect. She was a cold-blooded killer with a story so disturbing, so remorseless, it would soon make headlines across the country. Very little is known about Angela Simpson's early life, but what is clear is that she grew up in turmoil. Born on the 29th of November 1975, she spent much of her childhood in foster care, a system that, rather than providing stability, subjected her to further abuse. Simpson's experience wasn't unique. The foster care system in the United States is meant to provide temporary homes for children removed from unsafe situations, yet for many, it becomes a cycle of instability. Studies have shown that around 80% of children in foster care struggle with significant mental health issues, often stemming from past trauma and neglect. Many of these children bounce between multiple homes, never experiencing the consistency or support necessary for healthy development. In Simpson's case, the abuse she endured shaped her worldview. The physical and sexual violence she suffered in foster care left her deeply scarred. By the age of 10, she had already been institutionalised in various mental health facilities, diagnosed with multiple disorders that would follow her throughout her life.
I started being hospitalized at 10 years old. I have a mental history from 10 years old until present, so yeah.
As she grew older, her troubled past gave way to an adulthood marked by drug addiction, crime and instability. She never held a job, instead relying on robbery and sex work to fund her drug habit. She gave birth to 4 children, but they were all eventually taken from her and placed into the custody of her biological mother. Simpson had little to no contact with them, further cementing her isolation from any meaningful support system. This cycle is common among those who age out of foster care. Studies indicate that nearly half of foster youth become homeless within 18 months of leaving the system, and many turn to crime or substance abuse as a means of survival. Without adequate mental health support, Simpson's path to violence may have felt inevitable. Her life had been one of chaos and destruction, but nobody could have predicted just how far she would go. With Edward McFarland and Angela Simpson now behind bars, detectives pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth about what happened to Terry Neely. More statements were collected. That's when police spoke with a manager at a nearby apartment complex, and what he told them changed everything. The manager recalled an unsettling conversation with McFarland. McFarland had bragged about the murder, saying that he helped dispose of Terry's body. But when it came to who actually killed him, he pointed the finger at Angela Simpson. According to McFarland, Simpson had done everything herself. The torture, the murder, the dismemberment. His only role was helping her dispose of Terry's body. But it wasn't just a confession, it was also a threat. McFarland warned the manager that if he told anybody what he had heard, he'd end up just like Terry, dead and dismembered in a trash can. Luckily, the manager ignored the threat and went straight to police. Armed with this new information, detectives shifted their focus to Angela Simpson's apartment. What they found was unsettling. Outside, sitting in the grass, was Terry's motorised wheelchair. There was no doubt now, Terry had been inside that apartment before he was killed. Detectives quickly obtained a search warrant, and what they found inside was the stuff of nightmares. The apartment was barely livable. The carpet had been ripped up, the walls were stained, and the space felt more like a crime scene than a home. There was no furniture except for a single chair and a full-length mirror. Scattered around were a pair of needle-nose pliers, a gallon of great value brand bleach, and a lot of blood. But it was the final discovery that truly unsettled investigators. Amidst the filth and decay, they found the remains of a cat and a kitten. The kitten had been cut into 4 pieces, just like Terry. This wasn't just a crime of rage of opportunity. This was something far more disturbing. Angela Simpson didn't just kill Terry Neely, she enjoyed it. And soon, she would tell the world exactly why she did it. It was becoming more and more evident that Angela Simpson wasn't just involved in Terry Neely's murder. She was the sole architect of it. With enough evidence pointing directly at her, detectives brought her into the interrogation room. She sat down, looked at the detectives and made a single request. She would tell them everything in exchange for a candy bar. The detectives obliged, sliding the candy across the table. As Simpson unwrapped it, she smiled. And then she laughed. 3 bites of chocolate, she confessed. Not just to Terry Neely's murder, but to every unimaginable detail of what she had done to him. She told the detectives they had the right person. She had acted alone. Edward McFarland was innocent, she claimed. He had nothing to do with the murder, and had only let her borrow his car to dispose of the body.
I took him to my house. Walked him down the street. I don't know why the media acts like the motherfucker couldn't walk. He walked very well. Walked him upstairs, kicked his ass, and killed him.
When detectives asked why she had done it, she gave them an answer that was as chilling as it was senseless. She believed that Terry Neely was a snitch.
It was just too much. The things he talked about, it was too much.
Do you believe him? I mean, lots of people go around claiming I'm a snitch or make themselves...
Really? You don't say?
Well, I think they talk about law. I know people coming. I've got associations with law enforcement. You know, I've got this. I'm a friend with this.
Do you happen to have a list of those people?
They name drop. Well, maybe in the circle, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
People say lots of things to make themselves sort of look.
Well, he picked the wrong nigger to say that to. If he wanted to brag about putting so many people in prison, he picked the wrong person.
And that's what did it to him. That's why you.
What, the bragging?
The bragging
about
putting people in prison.
Right.
People you knew.
No, I don't know any of them.
Okay. Do you believe him? Do you think he really was a snitch?
Oops, if he wasn't.
And in her world, snitches had to die. She said, I don't want my children or the people I consider family to be in a place where there are snitches. But Terry Neely wasn't a snitch. He was a disabled man who had struggled his entire life. He lived alone in an assisted living facility. He had no real family and no criminal ties. He sometimes made things up to impress people. But to Angela Simpson, that didn't matter. She said that years ago, Terry had told her he had told on a righteous person. And for that, he had to die. Detectives sat in horrified silence as Simpson detailed every moment of the murder. How she had lured Terry to the abandoned apartment, promising him sex. How she had waited for the right moment, a tire iron hidden nearby, ready for the attack. Then she struck. She beat Terry relentlessly until he collapsed onto the floor, bleeding and barely conscious. But she didn't stop there. She forced him into a chair, positioning him in front of a mirror. She said she wanted him to see himself, to watch as she pulled out his teeth one by one. When asked why she had done that, her answer was cold and emotionless. He needed to see what he deserved. Because Terry was disabled, there was no escape. He couldn't run, he couldn't fight back, he could only sit there, trapped inside a nightmare. For 3 days, Simpson kept Terry alive, torturing him in ways almost impossible to imagine. She beat him again and again, switching between a tire iron and a hammer. Then she pulled out a 3-inch nail and drove it directly into his skull. But even that wasn't enough. Simpson then slashed his throat and strangled him with a TV wire. And only then, after days of unrelenting torture, did Terry finally die.
Help me understand. For 3 days, I know the crimes of passion or something, and in the heat of the moment. But to spend 3 days driving nails into a guy's head and pulling his teeth out.
Right.
Why?
I found it necessary.
Did you find it pleasurable or exciting, or was this just
necessary?
Necessary.
Right.
So this was more like a business-like proposition. You were doing something that you felt a job that needed to be done.
Right.
Really.
Right.
And whatever came into your head, I'm going to drive a nail into his head. Or was this just a symptom of what was at hand in that apartment?
Right.
But Simpson wasn't finished yet. With zero hesitation, she dismembered his body, packing his remains into a trash can. Then she borrowed McFarlane's car and drove to the Covenant of Grace Church, where she set his body on fire. When asked if she felt guilty, Simpson's response was chilling. "I don't feel bad about it. The only thing I'm mad about is that I didn't get to kill more snitches." But then she said something unexpected. She admitted that in some way she was relieved to have been arrested. She touched on her own mental health, stating, "I think something's wrong with the world I live in, but according to other people, yes, something's wrong with me." Simpson also told detectives that Terry wasn't her first victim, that she had killed before. She refused to divulge any more information, but she hinted, "I believe informants and child molesters should be killed, period." It was clear that in Angela Simpson's mind, she had become something of an enforcer, a person who had the right to kill people she believed deserved it. The murder sent shockwaves through the community, in part because of Terry Neely's vulnerabilities and the brutal way in which he was killed. As a paraplegic who required a wheelchair for mobility, he was part of a demographic that is disproportionately targeted for abuse and violence. People with disabilities, particularly those living in assisted care facilities, face a 4 times higher risk of experiencing violent crime compared to the general population. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, disabled individuals, especially those with cognitive impairments, are more likely to be victimised due to their perceived vulnerabilities. Angela Simpson claimed that she had killed Terry because she believed that he was a snitch. This reasoning is deeply rooted in street culture, where the idea of informing law enforcement is often met with extreme hostility. The no-snitching mentality has long been embedded in criminal circles, reinforced by rap lyrics, gang codes, and fear-driven environments where speaking to the police is seen as an unforgivable betrayal. In many communities, even innocent individuals have been accused of being informants and have suffered violent retribution as a result. But Simpson's justification for her actions was particularly chilling. She admitted that she barely knew Terry, and her belief that he was a police informant came solely from his own words. Words that may have been spoken in an effort to impress her. Terry was known to be friendly and eager to please. Those who knew him described how he often told people what they wanted to hear, sometimes embellishing stories to make himself sound more interesting. It's entirely possible that in a casual conversation, Terry mentioned something that led Simpson to believe he had once cooperated with police. But in Simpson's mind, that was enough to warrant his brutal execution. She said to detectives, "I don't want my children or the people I consider family to be in a place where there are snitches." Despite making a detailed and gruesome confession, to both detectives and reporters, Angela Simpson pleaded not guilty when she was officially charged. On the 28th of August, she was indicted on multiple charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, and abandonment or concealment of a dead body. Meanwhile, prosecutors were still deciding whether they would seek the death penalty. County Attorney Andrew Thomas made it clear that this case would be pursued aggressively, stating, "The level of cruelty alleged in this case is severe, and we will aggressively prosecute this case. Our office will determine in the near future whether to seek the death penalty for this defendant." But Simpson wasn't the only one facing charges. Edward McFarland, the man who helped dispose of Terry's body, was also indicted on felony charges of abandonment or concealment of a dead body and hindering prosecution. With Simpson behind bars, detectives turned their attention to one disturbing claim she made. During her interrogation, and later during news interviews, Simpson had suggested that Terry Neely wasn't her first victim. But was she telling the truth? Phoenix Police spokesperson Louis Samatito addressed the chilling possibility, stating, "It's going to take a long time because we don't know if she's telling us the truth or not. They have to evaluate what she says, review some cases, and put her at the scene regardless if it's here or wherever she lived at the time." Detectives launched a full-scale investigation, combing through unsolved cases that might match her violent modus operandi. But despite their efforts, they found no evidence that Simpson had ever killed before. Her claims of multiple murders was just a sick and twisted lie. For years, there was no public updates in the case. But then on the 22nd of March 2012, Angela Simpson returned to court and changed her plea. She pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of Terry Neely. It was part of a plea deal. In exchange for her guilty plea, the death penalty was taken off the table. Just 1 month later, she was sentenced. Judge Paul McMurdy handed down the harshest sentence possible: natural life in prison for murder, with an additional 14 years in prison for the other charges. Natural life means no possibility of parole, no early release, no furlough, no chance at freedom. For Angela Simpson, prison was now her home forever. But if she felt any remorse for what she had done, she certainly didn't show it. In fact, she mocked her own sentencing. She had no sympathy for Terry Neely or his loved ones. Instead, she bragged that she wished she would have kept Terry alive longer, that she wanted to torture him for a full week.
Angela, I've seen previous interviews and with the police, and one of our colleagues talked to you once upon a time. You're very upfront.
Pretty much.
About talking about this killing.
Right.
You murdered this man.
Yes.
You tortured him.
Of course.
There is no ambiguity, and there is nothing you want to... In court today, you said you're not here to pretend to be remorseful.
Of course not. Why would I do that?
Are you remorseful?
Not at all.
Why?
Why would I be?
Well, why did this man deserve to die? You claimed he was a snitch.
Well,
what proof do you have of that?
He told me he was a snitch.
He told you.
On many occasions. But that really doesn't matter. Why did you guys want to kill me? Phoenix wanted to kill me. What's the difference? Everybody has a reason to kill. My reason might not be good to you, but your reason wasn't good to me. So.
And her previous claims of killing multiple people, she admitted that that was just a lie. Simpson then touched on her own mental health problems.
When you say mental history, I mean, do you care that anyone feels sorry for you? Do you want anybody?
Feel sorry for me?
Yeah. Should the people who are watching this say because she had a bad childhood?
Of course not.
Because she has mental illness?
Of course not. No.
That we should feel some sympathy for you?
No.
You would not have that?
I want no sympathy. No.
What then? Do you care what anybody thinks about Angela Simpson and what you have done?
I don't.
It's again your candor I've interviewed people who have committed murders before, and usually they sort of prevaricate or they this or that. You're about as direct as it gets.
Right.
Why is that?
It's only fair. I expect you to be the same way.
Okay. Do you think that it was fair today? It was justice in that courtroom?
No, I don't.
Why?
I should have gotten the death penalty.
Did you want the death penalty?
No, I prefer to spend my life with my sisters, but yeah, I do believe that would have been justice.
She also spoke about how she was being treated in jail.
It's terrible. Jail is awful. They don't, they have no, well, they have no compassion. They don't give us the things we need here.
Will prison to your understanding?
I certainly hope so, yes.
Have you done time in prison?
No.
So you're hoping that it will be a better existence?
Yes, definitely.
Simpson said she didn't think too much about her punishment.
You know, I got a lot of family in prison, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I got many sisters in prison. I can't wait to see them. It's really not that much of a punishment to be sentenced to spend my life with my family.
But there was one thing she did regret. That she didn't get the chance to kill a second victim. An alleged armed robber she had been targeting. She said, "I just didn't have time. I had to go somewhere. I should have killed him when I had the go." But perhaps the most chilling moment came when she was asked if she would kill again. Without hesitation, Angela Simpson issued a dark warning. "If the opportunity arises, I hope so." Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to say a massive thank you to my newest supporter up on Patreon, Roberta. This was a requested episode, and it turned out a little bit shorter than the normal episodes, but it's such a bizarre and unique case that I really did want to cover it. Morbidology has a private Facebook group, and I'd love for you guys to join. Just head on over to Facebook, search for Morbidology, and join the group there. I'd love for you guys to share your thoughts on the episodes, suggest cases, and just generally chat on there. Morbidology is also now up on YouTube, so you can head on over there and hit the subscribe button. The episodes are the same as the episodes on the podcast, but they're presented in documentary style, with videos, footage, photos, anything associated with the case. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read some true crime articles. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have an amazing week.